Happy Sunday. What an amazing Sunday. Kaden Dixon Wyatt is now a Buckeye. What an incredible commitment. A great coup for Brian Hartline. We're going to talk about what that means and watch this film. We've got Bill the Bank Greene here with his freshly minted extension to extend with Buckeye Scoop. So we're really excited about that. We're going to talk a little bit about this kid. I think he's a superstar. I think he's got the traits that Brian Hartline loves in terms of reliability. But we're going to get Bill Greene's take on it because he's a recruiting expert around these parts. So as always, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. It's a huge day for Buckeye Scoop, a huge day for Ohio State. We had this thing a while ago, so Scoop had this one first, which I love. Shout out to Funky, shout out to Bill Greene, great sourcing on this one. So really excited about the direction of this receivers room. It's been incredible. It keeps greatness, perpetuates greatness, and that's what's going on with Zone 6 and Brian Hartline. But I'm going to get right to it with Bill Greene. Bank, this is a kid that you've seen a lot. Brett Getz loves him. This kid is, I think he's a star. His film is great, really smooth kid. Honestly, his announcement was one of the least suspenseful ones because he didn't have 7 hats and marching band and everything else. It was just literally him and his mom at a table, and 3 minutes after it started, it was over, and he picked Ohio State, which I low-key love. But your thoughts on Ohio State getting a commitment from Kaden Dixon Wyatt?
Yeah, I like him a lot. I've seen him the past 2 winters down in Florida playing 7-on-7. Love the kid. Solid, consistent, the same guy day after day after day, where, you can get some of these stud receivers and they're, it's like buying stock. It could go up, it could go down. I think this kid is probably about as close to a sure thing as you could get. To me, he's a Mecca. He's a Mecca Buka. He's not going to leap over tall buildings. He's not going to win 40-yard dashes. He's going to beat people. And I think he's going to be ready to play right away, too. Fourth receiver in the class. Chris Henry's obviously the headliner, and deservedly so. I think Chris he could end up being JJ, but he could also bust out. He's had some injuries, and but with this kid, with Kaden Dixon Wyatt, I just think you just watch the first 5 or 6, 7 plays of his film, and you can see pretty much who he is. He's 6'2", he's 190. He's not a blazer, but he can run. He's got great hands. He catches everything. The routes are perfect. Plays great competition. So there's really, to me, the bust factor here is 0. He's the 4th receiver in the class. I would guess they're done taking receivers. The other 2, Boyd and Ricketts are probably projects. Henry could be the guy with the most variance. He could be, he could be a lot of things at Ohio State, from, a bust out to, an all-time great. But this kid, Kaden Dixon Wyatt, I'll be stunned if he doesn't have the same career Mecca Buka had. You don't really notice him until you need him. You know what I mean? When it's 3rd and 12 and it's a tight game and you're in the 4th quarter, this guy's going to make a nice play for you, keep a drive going, or score a touchdown. So these are the kind of guys that I love. You know what I mean? You just plug them and play them. The relationship with Hartline won the day here. Was he an NIL kid? Probably, but Ohio State can match up in that area. So once you match up the money, then it was the relationship with Hartline, which has been a long one. It's been an ongoing relationship. And then you look at development. Who's going to put this kid in? When you look at it from the kid's point of view, when the money is satisfied, then it's, how do I get developed to play in the NFL? And I think that's probably what won the day here, when the money was going to be good no matter what school he chose.
Talk a little bit about like Brian Hartline. The South Florida Express connection has been incredible. This is another SFE kid between, obviously with JJ, Ennis, Tate, Mylan Graham. It's crazy at this point, because again, those are they're all really, really ready to go kids. Like, I love kids that play 7-on-7. I know it's not real football, but it's something where they're competitive year round. They're traveling. They're in pressure packed situations. This is another kid that's a Brett Getz SFE kid. Talk a little bit about the connection between Brian and Brett Getz and SFE, because again, this pipeline is something that is very lucrative for Ohio State, because we get kids and they're dogs. I mean, they're ready to go. And guys like Ennis is a leader of the team already. He's a young kid. JJ kind of looks up to him. JJ is the alpha monster dog, obviously, but Brandon and these guys, and I feel like the greatness perpetuates greatness when it comes to bringing these kids, to Ohio, which isn't Miami, it's not South Beach, it's not LA, but kids are coming here because if you come here and you follow the script and you keep your mouth shut and do your work, you're going to be a first round pick, and that's just kind of where it is. And I kept saying over and over again, if my kid was Kaden Dixon Wyatt, and I watch Oregon's top receiver go in the 7th round, almost fall out of the draft, and I watch Emeka, who I thought was a top 10 pick, just because, I don't like taking a big swing and missing on a kid. Emeka is going to be a lock 10-year pro, barring injury, 80 catches a year, 1,000 yards a year. You'll look down and he'll be close to probably, not maybe Hall of Fame numbers, but close to it. And he's going to make a Pro Bowl or two. And that's going to be a Mecca. And I think that's what Kaden Dixon Wyatt could be. Talk a little bit about like with Brian, SFE, and what that's done for Ohio State's receiver room.
Well, they do have a great relationship with that SFE 7-on-7 team, but you screw over one kid or do somebody wrong, and that relationship would be gone in an instant, because South Florida Express got the best receivers in the country and they can go anywhere. So I think it kind of speaks to Brian's expertise, in how he treats kids. Recruiting kids is only half the battle. Recruiting is salesmanship, and you can buy a house from a corrupt real estate agent who can talk a good game, and you'll badmouth that guy the rest of your life. So Brian backs up what he's selling Ohio State with how he treats people. And you pretty much like you hit it. If you follow the plan they have for you, things are going to work out. Brandon Ennis has not really played a lot of football to this point. He's had to wait his turn, he's done his job in practice, done what they asked to do. And now this year he'll step up, he'll take a spot, and Brandon will catch 50 balls this year, and his time to play in the NFL is coming. So I think that's the thing. It's not just the ability to sell kids, recruit kids. It's deeper than that. It's taking care of these kids once they come to you. And that's what leads South Florida Express. They trust Heartline. They trust Randay. They know these kids are going to be treated right. They're going to be given every opportunity. Now the best players play. So when you get that opportunity, you better run with it. You better take advantage of it, because you're going to be competing against the best in America. So nobody gets guaranteed anything in terms of playing time. But I think they can almost guarantee these kids that from the coaching staff point of view, they're going to get everything they need.
Yeah, I think that's it's really accurate. And it is tough, because once you get a reputation amongst a group, it's tough. I mean, we've seen coaches. I mean, you live in Massillon, and when Tommy Tuberville told Kyle Kemp that he wasn't welcome at Cincinnati, like that went over like about as bad as it ever could. Yeah. And there's these instances where, if a kid has a bad experience, or the worst thing you do to kids, lie to them, and it's tough. Right. And it's a very delicate operation with these coaches now, with NIL, with transfer portal. Hey, coach, have I got to play? And it's like, well, if you say no, then they're out. And then also you lose your second string tackle or whatever. So it's never been harder to try to be honest than it is in coaching right now, because you have to try to keep 100 people happy at once. And it's just not possible in general. As we get into, this is kind of the heavy recruiting season coming up. Obviously the coaches are on the road for May. June is camps, official visits. What do you look for Ohio State to try to get done over the next 2 months? Obviously there's Tyler Bowen is a whirlwind when it comes to recruiting the O-line. camps are coming up to, maybe you got some of those late bloomers that you want to get your eyes on and see if they're worth offering, like a Jake Cook. What do you want to see Ohio State get done over the next couple of months?
They they need to grab a quarterback, and I'm not sure where they're at with that position. That position always comes number one for me. So I don't really know where they're headed there. That I kind of like, and Nathan Bernhard. I mean, but he wouldn't be CJ Stroud. Okay. But he's good, and I think they could get him if they wanted him. He's committed to Appalachian State, and all Ohio State would have to do is call, and he would drop them like right away. So that's the first thing I always look at is where are you at the quarterback spot. And right now, I don't know. There's a lot of good ones too, and a lot of them are committed elsewhere. Can you go ahead and get them to decommit and steal them? Yeah, why not? So a long way to go, like you said, but that's the first place I'm looking right now, and I don't have an answer as to where they're going there. Next, man, I think Larry Johnson. You hate to criticize him, legend, but I think things have to get back to where they used to be on the D line. O line, like you mentioned with Tyler Bowen, man, no complaints with that dude. They're in a position where I think they could take 7. I know you almost hate to do that in one class, but I'm telling you, man, he's set. I mean, he's got guys that he's probably going to be at the point where he's going to have to say no to someone that wants in that's really freaking good. And it's usually not that way. It hasn't been that way at Ohio State O-line recruiting in ever. Never, ever. So I love what he's doing. So that's where I look first. I look at quarterback first, D-line, O-line, and then we go from there. So I just think Larry Johnson, I don't know. He's still Larry Johnson. He's still great, but the recruiting just hasn't seemed to be what it was. So we'll see. Like I say, I think he needs a big win somewhere along the line.
Yeah, because I think that it's an interesting spot with Larry Johnson, because Larry Johnson is a guy that obviously legend, but the age thing is going to be used against him for the rest of his career because he's over 70. But like my point is like, look, it lost a bunch of weight, looks great. He's making $1.4 million a year to coach the defensive line, which that has to be the highest D-line coach in. So it's like, is he really dying to walk away from that to go play shuffleboard in Naples? I don't know. But I mean, he spent the first 30 years of his career coaching high school and middle school and D-line at Penn State back when they weren't paying 1.4 million. They were probably paying 200 grand. So, you get to be 70 something, you make it 1.4 a year. Again, I think that what they did on the offensive line, and this is one of the most underrated things of Ryan Day's genius, is he hired 3 offensive line coaches this offseason. He hired Mike Gundy's offensive line coach to come here as an associate, and that guy's a good coach. And Marcus Johnson, who again is a guy who played in the league for 7 years, coached at Mississippi State. Again, those guys all have different recruiting footprints, and I think that like when you put Tyler Bowen, Northeast, Penn State, Virginia Tech, you put Marcus Johnson, that Southern, you're at Mississippi State, you're recruiting Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Florida, Bama, Georgia, that footprint, and then you've got Charlie Dickey, who's Mike Gundy's O-line coach, and you're at Oklahoma State, you're recruiting Texas a lot of Texas, a lot of South. So you've got 3 guys that are kind of architects of different footprints, and I think that's so brilliant by Ryan. And not to mention, you get 3 guys coaching on the field at the same time because they lifted the cap on guys that can coach. So I think, do you think they should do something like that with Larry Johnson? And they kind of have.
They did. They did have. Who did they have? They had someone for like a year or 2, and then he took off.
Yeah,
but it looked like.
Yeah, well, they've got a kid from UCLA he was like the outside linebackers coach last year that's working under Larry, and they've got another one, but like they didn't hire like 2 other full like D-line, like former D-line coaches, because they were kind of lesser roles, like the 12th kind of coach guys. They weren't like the literal O-line coach, because Marcus Johnson was literally the line coach of Purdue last year, And then, Charlie Dick was literally the O-line coach at Oklahoma State, and they were tenured for multiple years. Marcus Johnson was the guy that's at Mississippi State for multiple years. So I don't know. I think like with Larry, that the age thing is going to be an issue going forward because every single kid is like, well, are you going to be my position coach? And the thing I would tell these kids, and again, this isn't what they want to hear, but a position coach that's as fluid of a position as there is in the entire world. Because if your position coach is any good, he's going to get hired to be a coordinator somewhere, or he's got to, if Brian Hartline becomes a head coach next year, then guess what? Like that position coach might be going to be his coordinator. So again, I've seen transitions across the board, but how would you counteract it? Because again, you're imagine you're Mark Pantoni. Congrats on the $900,000 extension, Mark. We appreciate you, my dude. Imagine that's going to be the battle with Larry, but it's hard to push Larry out because if you push Larry out, then all of a sudden Edric Houston might hit the portal. Some of these kids that came exclusively to play for Larry would not be thrilled for that.
Yeah.
But how would you engineer this if you're Mark Pantoni, Ryan Day, and you're trying to amplify the defensive line recruiting?
Yeah, well, you don't push Larry Johnson out, number one, and I wasn't even hinting that at all. But I just, facts are facts. You know what I mean? This is it's a win-loss business, and you can look at the last couple of recruiting classes on the D line, then you can go back to JTT and Sawyer and those guys, and there's a difference here. So, but one thing I always think you could do is do the same thing that you've done on the O-line. Go find a young, dynamic recruiter, teacher somewhere in America on the D line and tell him, my guy Larry Johnson is 71, 72 years old. We're going to sit down with Larry, the three of us. You're going to be the next guy at Ohio State. The year after, we're going to talk to Larry and get his long plan. But you are my choice to be the next D-line coach at Ohio State. Let Larry coach him up, and you're going to help him with the recruiting. And that's probably what I would do. And like I say, look at the guys that they got on the O-line, with Bowen. There's got to be a guy at Virginia Tech or West Virginia or somewhere like that who's really good, young, dynamic, and you steal him. You overpay him. You tell him you're the next guy. You're going to learn from Larry how to coach on the field. We're going to help you be a better recruiter with our NIL stuff and how we do things. So I think that's probably how I would go. I would never hint at forcing Larry Johnson out, but yet production has to improve there in terms of recruiting, not on field production, but the recruiting has to get better there on the D line.
Yeah, I agree. Like again, I told the story the other night on the show that like I've known Larry since 2000 when I went and camped at Penn State, and I was the olden days, the old days. It was we went to a 5-day camp at Penn State overnight, and it was like in the morning you did defense, at night you did offense. It was like the old like 2-a-day camp, but it was great. I loved it. But I've known him forever. I've always loved his energy. Players rave about him. He said all 4 of his guys just got drafted, and Edric Houston's going to end up being a first-round pick, and Caden McDonald's probably going to be a top 3-round pick. And again, I think that adding Bo Atkinson is enormous because it gives you a 6'6".
No,
yeah, because I think that he's I really think he's good. I've watched a lot of his film. He's active. He hustles. He plays hard. And the biggest thing, it's like I tell people, Bank, is like he had 7.5 sacks last year in the ACC, and he was, he's playing South Carolina getting sacks. So he's playing real teams. This isn't some kid from Appalachia or the one Charleston Southern or some dinky school. This is like he's playing real schools, beating their good tackles and getting sacks. So again, I think he's our best defensive end now. So a question I was going to ask you, because this is something that I always like to kind of bring up, because obviously, people, Justin Fry's recruiting was whatever. But how much, when you're grading a coach now on his recruiting, how much do you factor in the ability to land commitments in the transfer portal? Because to me, I think it's a lot like if you're an NFL team and you have a good draft, but then you have the amazing free agency. You have to kind of combine the two offseason components to say, okay, this is who really won the offseason. This team signed this player and they drafted this guy and whatever. Because that's like, for me, Larry being able to get Bo Atkinson was a huge help. It's like with Justin Fry, as much as people might have been, whatever, didn't text kids enough, but he got Josh Simmons, who was a first round left tackle. And if he didn't get hurt, he's probably a top 10 pick. And he got, Seth McLaughlin, who should have been drafted, won the Remington. How much do you factor those two in together? Because I think when you can go out and get a really good portal kid, especially at the line, in the trenches, O-line, D-line, where guys develop a lot slower, I feel like, than receivers, because you don't have many freshman David Sanders guy, and I don't think David Sanders could contribute on this team anyways, but how do you evaluate those two components combined for a recruiter like Larry? Because again, I give Larry bonus points for getting Bo Atkinson, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough because I don't know. The only way I can judge things is by, when we get to August 1st, who's in your room?
Yep.
That's the only way you can judge. You know what I mean? Who you got? Who are you putting on the field? Who did you come up with? Now, do I know if Larry had any contact with Bo Atkinson? Was it strictly you're playing for a dog crap team? You got a new coach coming in Belichick. It's all going to be weird for a while. Come here, man. We win national championships and we can pay you a ton of money. I mean, I wouldn't even need to talk to the D-line coach if I'm in Atkinson's situation. Real, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If he's getting money and he's playing for a nationally powerhouse team, so, and we don't know the intricacies of the recruitment of the portal guys. I don't know. You know what I mean? But so all I can judge is who lines up for you in the fall. And if you got dudes, then you did a good job recruiting, because NIL has changed the game so much in terms of, recruiting, because we don't know. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we do not know. Who got an offer that they just cannot refuse financially? The money is sick right now. And we're not hearing the figures, okay? In the NFL, we know every contract. We know everyone. In college, we don't know them, but I know a lot of them from people on the inside who tell me if I breathe a word of the numbers, I get my face ripped off. So I don't do that, but I know the numbers, and the numbers are staggering.
Oh yeah. Oh, I agree. Like when I hear what some backup guys are getting paid by other teams, it's especially like, because there's an Ohio.
It's crazy.
Yeah, there's an Ohio State premium.
It's real money. I mean, you know what I mean? No doubt. No doubt. I mean, you look at J.J. Smith. I mean, and I will not, I'm not knowing any numbers, but staggering. It's staggering. And he's obviously at the top, the best player in the country. But you could filter down to someone that you think is the number 58 kid at Ohio State on the 85-man roster. Who do you think's 58 or 57? They're making money. It's crazy. And God bless them. They're the game. They should make the money.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the funny thing is, like, with that 57 and 58 is that, they go to some other school like Indiana or Kansas State, and all of a sudden they're getting paid top 10 on the roster. So that's the crazy thing to me, man, is like, what do you make of depth going forward? Because I've been saying with this new NIL world, man, depth to me is a complete illusion, because your depth is prime in the crosshairs of the poachers, because the poachers are coming after your entire second string and paying starter money. I mean, there's some kids that turn down an insane amount of money. I'm talking $500,000 to stay at Ohio State this second portal, which is why when that portal window closed, Ryan Day said that he cracked a couple beers, and by a couple, he probably had a 6-pack or a 12-pack. Because, I mean, some of these guys were getting offered crazy money. And it's like, Ohio State, as much money as we have, there is a line, because again, someone's going to go out and fundraise that money. And and plus all these coaches just got raised. I mean, Larry Johnson's making 1.4, Hartline's making 2, Patricia's making 2.5, Pantoni's making 900. I mean, these guys all got big raises on the staff now too. So I mean, Matt Guerrero's making 1.3 million, a guy that was an intern 2 years ago. So it's
Right.
like, these guys, OG Walt's making 1.8 and he's just a co-coordinator. So again, and that's fine. That's amazing. But like, the
Great.
money's got to come from somewhere. There isn't just like some magic button you hit and the money starts flowing into the vault. But I think you look at the future of this thing, um, and if you're the GM and you're doing this, because I said this on a show a few weeks ago, if I'm the O line coach, I'm aiming to get probably one tackle a year out of the portal. Because, like, when you get Josh Simmons as a first rounder, Ethan Onyanwa looked great in the spring games, lighter. He could be a top 3 round pick if he keeps his weight under control. He's a really sharp kid. Like, what percentage of your recruiting and your resources? Because again, when you're managing that room and you're the GM of the O line room, the D line room, how much of it do you devote to the portal? Because again, you go to the portal and you get Bo Atkinson. I mean, Bo Atkinson's got 7.5 sacks in college football last year, major college football on a bad team where he was a marked man. And now he's going to show up here and he's going to be, I think him and Kenyatta are starting ends like on first down because I want my 2 6'6" guys out there to stop the run. No offense to Caden Curry, who I think is a really nice player, but he's a little dude, man. You put him out there on first down and they run at him, it's not going to end up well for us. So how much of it do you think about, devoting portal, which again, I know that's very iffy, but Ohio State has had they are by far the best portal team in the country. And Mark Pantoni's got that thing dialed in to the point where we're not missing on portal kids anymore. There's no more Victor Cutlers and
Right.
we're hitting grand slam home runs, getting like Max Clare, who's a preseason first team All-American tight end per ESPN.com. I mean, Ethan Onyanwa was a really good looking left tackle. How do you configure it if you're Ryan Day, Pantone, you go to these coaches, hey, this is how much we want for the high schoolers, how much you want for the portal. What are your thoughts on that?
I still think high school recruiting has to be number one because you're not going to be able to build a team year after year out of the portal. You're just not going to be able to
No.
do it. Now, can you get 5 or 6, 7 guys out of the portal a year? I think you could, you can get 5 or 6, I think, selectively targeting what you need. Where did we fall short? Tight end room might not exactly be the envy of the NFL right now. You add Max Clare, and I remember Max from high school, and he's a million times better than I ever thought he could be. So I was wrong on Max. He's a dude. So you go plug and play with Max, and maybe you look at the O-line. You got a lot of guys coming back this year on that O-line, but yet you needed help on the outside. So you go get Onyanwa. You know what I mean? I like that plug and play strategy, but you can't build your team out of the portal. It's not going to be done. But man, if your high school recruiting is solid, and that's where you establish your culture. Listen, the kids that have been there 2, 3, 4 years, that's where your culture comes from. And then you plug in, hey, we're a little short at QB this year. Let's go get Will Howard. You know what I mean? And then the superstar becomes available like Caleb Downs. Go get him by all means. But the bulk of your team still has to look at the championship team last year. A lot of great portal kids helped win that championship. But, the bulk of that team was Burke and JTT and Sawyer and Tyleek and, Trey Henderson and that O-line. You know what I mean? So I still think high school recruiting has to be at the forefront. But man, like you said, then you ain't getting Vic Cutler anymore. You're getting Sean Judkins, and Max Clare. Max Clare is going to be a superstar. And Max Clare may be a superstar right now. You don't notice him, at Purdue. You'll notice him at Ohio State. And he'll be the best friend to a rookie quarterback this year. You know what I mean? It's going to be Julian Sayin, who hasn't played much before. Yes, he's got JJ on the outside, who's good as it could be. But, man, to have that pass-catching tight end, dependable dude, that is the best friend for Julian Sayin. I think Max Clare is going to do wonders for Julian. So I love their approach. Mark Pantoni's the best at this. So it doesn't surprise me that when they went to this new portal system, that he's at the forefront of it, that he knows what he needs. You know what I mean? So I love what they're doing. I mean, well, they got a championship. You know what I mean? And they played by the rules. They did nothing, below the board. They did everything above board. They're a leader in NIL. They're a leader in how to handle the portal. That's how you win. So, yeah, I love what they're doing. I love the trajectory they're on right now. This is why I don't think it was a 1-year wonder.
No.
You know what I mean? Now, this year, I'm not predicting a national championship this year. This could be, more of maybe a step back year where you get better as the year goes on. Just get into the tournament and be a team that nobody wants to play. Maybe Texas wants to play Ohio State in September, may not want to play them in January. Could be that type of team. But if you look 3, 4, 5 years down the road, if the foundation that they've built, if this is who they're going to be going forward, they're going to compete for championships every year. Every year.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at the way they've developed and really the culture that's here now is, I don't think it's matched anywhere, just in terms of, it's like I said, if I'm a 5-star kid and I go to Georgia where they've had a lot of suspect off the field stuff, Texas is kind of shaky ground with Sark. Ryan Day just got a 7-year extension. They just won a national championship, and they're really selective about who they bring in the portal. Like, I mean, Will Howard, they love that guy. Quinshon Judkins, they love that guy. Ethan Onyanwa is like an engineering or a doctor. I mean, he's got some crazy major where he's like a really sharp kid. They love that guy. So they're really selective about who they bring in. They really don't, and honestly, they're really shrewd with their money. As big as some of the numbers are, they're really shrewd. I mean, they get guys for discounts. Like I'm like you, I know a lot of the numbers. And a guy like JJ is warranted, but I think that something that they're really good about is they bring in a guy like Max Clare. Max Clare is a guy who developed late. I've watched his film versus Penn State 10 times where he's going against Abdul Carter, and he had 7 catches, 120 yards, a touchdown. I mean, he was a first round pick in that game. Unbelievable. And I always think about the synergy that'll provide for Jelani Thurman, because Jelani's a kid going into year 3, a kid who's got a ton of ability, a kid that Chris Carter loves. Chris Carter was at practice for a few days and was watching Jelani run around, and he's got NFL bloodlines, NFL prototype. But I think a guy like Max Clare can do a lot for him. It's the same with Caleb Downs. Like, you bring in some of these guys and they show these guys how to work, how to study film, how to train. Caleb Downs has just been a godsend because his dad is a longtime NFL guy, really good NFL player. Josh Downs is a great player for the Colts. Caleb's going to be a top 10 pick. And honestly, I think that Bo Atkins is going to add some of that to the D-line room, because Jack's gone and JT's gone, and who's going to be your veteran leader? Like, I think Bo could really assume a lot of that, because I watch his tape, man, and he does not stop. He doesn't get tired. He runs a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And that's the kind of stuff that those coaches like to point to say, hey, this is a guy that does it the right way. This is, some of the guys that might be young, might be freshmen that are looking at it. I think it's excellent. Another thing I want to ask you about is kind of this backfill, because I talk about the tiers of the portal, and we always, it's like, I've gone to camps with you and we've watched camps, and there's always these fringe kids in the state of Ohio that they're like right at that line of offer, and they might fall right short of it, and they don't end up getting the offer. They end up at West Virginia, they end up at Pitt, Michigan State, Cincinnati, wherever. Talk a little bit about how, something I think that's really brilliant that Mark Pantoni and these guys are doing is they're taking some of these kids now that they know want to be Buckeyes, and they were right on that cusp, and they had the relationship, and they fell just short. I'm talking about Philip Daniels going, from Cincinnati, Princeton to over to Minnesota. I'm talking about Justin Terry going from Pickerington Central to West Virginia, especially with the big bodies. Because again, I always say that every offensive lineman is a project, unless it's maybe Paris. But most O linemen, if they're coming in and playing as true freshmen, they're either Orlando pace or you're on a bad team, because those guys, if they're ready to go block, Mason Graham as a true freshman on the O line, then that means that you don't have anybody else, or they're just really that dude. And there's not many guys that are that dude as an 18-year-old. But talk a little bit about that, because I think that's been really interesting how they've been backfilling the O line a little bit with some kids that were scholarship guys that they almost wanted, and then they took them here. And like I said, when you said they should take 7 linemen, I was like, they should do that every year, and then have them compete to see who gets to stay after a year or two, because it's like camp never ends for these guys, because they gotta figure out who are the guys that can really play or not. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, and I maybe go a little overboard with O-line, and I wouldn't take 7, 4 of them are projects, but because I think this year is kind of an interesting year in that they're in on so many kids. They got 3 committed right now at this early juncture. They've had years where they take 3 or 4. And man, are they, you start, you're not going to say no to Smith or Felix Ojo or some of these guys. I mean,
Yeah.
they may take, I think, when the quality's there, then I'm going to stretch. I'm going to stretch my number for O-line. You know what I mean? Where I may not stretch at tight end or linebacker, but O-line, I'm going to stretch my number. If it's a kid that I cannot say no to, and they may be in that position this year, then I'm taking. That's the way I'm going to do. Now, wide receiver, you got 4 committed right now. Am I going to take a 5th one? No, unless it's, Jerry Rice Jr. But I'm not looking to take another receiver. But that O-line, I think that room's a little light right now. I think there's some kids there that cannot play. So if I get 7 dudes, I know taking 7 seems ridiculous. I'd probably take 7 of them. Well, I mean that position group is that important to me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think about years when we coached, and years that even when I played at Ohio State, there were guys in my class like Mike McGlynn played in the NFL, Tom Anevsky, guys that were in my class that Corey Lichtensteiger, who played at Bowling Green for your boy Campbell, and played in the league. I mean, those guys, if we would have had this many scholarships, they all could have came with me, or those guys could have portaled out and came to Ohio State and played right next to me, because they were better than the guys that I was with, because those are NFL dudes, but we just didn't back then. I mean, they took one offensive lineman, man. So it was like, it was a weird deal, because that was the year the entire team was back from the 02 team. So it was like a dinky 17 person recruiting class. So you couldn't stretch it out from 85 to 90 scholarships up to 105 scholarships. So I think it's fascinating, man. And in the offensive line, there's so many guys that come on later. Ethan Onion was a kid that's at Rice, and he's our 3rd highest paid NIL guy on the roster now. And he's a kid that started at Rice. And you go look at his high school recruiting profile, and I don't see Texas, I don't see Georgia, I don't see Bama, I see Rice, and like Rice and Texas State, and I mean, you're not, and now the kid's right. He's a monster. So I think that you got to take those guys if they've got traits, and a lot of these kids either have to gain weight, they have to lose weight. But this is a rare year. I mean, in terms of years that you've covered Ohio recruiting and offensive line, I mean, you don't get Max Riley, Sam Greer, you don't get this treasure trove of great linemen in one class very often. Like, where does this one rank in the years of you covering it? Because I mean, you've got legitimate 5-star guys in this class that are already committed to Ohio State, which is fantastic.
But then you look at the guys that have gone elsewhere. You look at someone like Adam Guthrie. I think Adam Guthrie has a chance to be a really dude. Ben Congdon, I think, has a chance to be really special. This is one of the best O-line classes I've ever seen in the state of Ohio. Now, Ohio State is getting their due. They're getting their guys. But other people are getting guys, too, out of Ohio that are really good. Lucas Telsch, the kid out of Copley, he's got a chance to be the best one of all. Now, he's going to be a 4-year down-the-road guy. And I don't know if Ohio State, at this stage of where they're at, takes big-time developmental guys, but somebody's going to get that kid, and he may end up being really special. So this is an amazing O-line group in Ohio, especially their tackles, too. They're not 6'2", 300-pound interior guys. They're big, tall, long dudes at tackle. It's a great tackle class in Ohio. And Ohio State's going to get theirs. And then, when you go outside, and if you can land Felix Ojo, someone like that, I mean, they're really set to really clean house in this O-line class. They got 3 right now that are 3 plums, so I'm anxious to see what this O-line group looks like, come signing day next February. Could be one of the
Yeah,
best O-line hauls I've ever seen.
yeah, I think it's like I thought, Tyler Bowen is doing a great job, but he also showed up kind of in the nick of time because like when you've got Sam Greer as a senior and you got Max Riley, because there's some years in Ohio, man, where there's just not a lot, and you're at the mercy of going out of state and transfer portal. But this ain't one of them years. This is a year where you can mine Ohio and get a legitimate starting
Yeah,
line that's going to be really good, really young, which
no
is really
doubt.
exciting. Uh, I want to go back to the quarterback situation because this is something that I never. There's one thing that like there's things in life I don't stress out about if Jeff Bezos can afford to buy lunch. I don't like Ryan Day and quarterbacks. It's something I'm just never going to lose sleep over because I feel like when you look at the names Jared Curtis, Bradley Schmagel, Will Griffin, Nathan Bernard, probably more of a plan B-ish type guy. It's
Yeah,
I mean it's not Diabell, like it's not going too hot right now, but you look at three of our last four quarterbacks have been from the portal. I mean, Justin Fields was with the waiver before the portals were really
yeah,
a thing. CJ was a guy that CJ, and the funny thing was CJ is he was our second quarterback in the class after Miller.
yeah,
And then you look at
sure.
our last, or and obviously, well, Kyle had his year, so I guess 3 out of the last 5 because Kyle had a year before we pulled
Yeah,
him. But then you've got Will Howard, and then Julian Sane was a portal kid, even though it was a really weird one because he was at Alabama for about 7 days
yeah,
and came here.
yep.
But talk a little bit about at what point do you go to the portal, which again is going to be tough because Julian's going to have another year after this year, a minimum, if not 2 more years, which I think that hurts you with the quarterback recruiting versus taking up a plan. I mean, do you take a plan B-ish guy here just because it's, when Julian's only a true sophomore and he's projected to be the starter? I mean, I feel like that scares guys away. Now, maybe if he vomits down his lap, then it might change it. But he's a 5-star kid. He's an Elite
Yeah.
11 champion. He's got a big pedigree, Southern California kid. Talk a little bit about where would you go with the quarterback recruiting? Because you want to take somebody, but at what point is it, do we go find a portal kid versus take a more of a plan B-ish type kid?
Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of really good ones in this class, but a ton of them are committed already.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that they've, got their money and, so they're, I don't know, unless you go try to buy somebody that's committed somewhere else. I still think, the way like you laid it out there, this is a position where you can go get someone. And Ryan
Mhm.
Day has went and got someone. Justin Fields was way ahead of this. He was
Yeah.
pre-portal. In my mind, it was a total different situation than Will Howard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Ryan Day has shown that he can go get somebody. So I don't think it hurts this year to take Nathan Bernhard. He's a kid I really like. I like Nathan a lot. And in other years, Ohio State has taken a Nathan Bernhard. He's Todd Beckman, maybe better. So I think you can afford to do that because Ryan Day has shown he can plug and play at quarterback. So it's such a different game now than, I've been doing this for 25 years now, and you have to adjust with the times. It's different now. So I think you can afford to take a Nathan Bernhard this year, spend 3 years on him, develop him. But at the same time, keep your eyes open. Who's the kid at Oregon State that hates losing, that's not making any money, but you watch this film and it's like, holy crap, this kid can play. Go get him. You know what I mean? So with Ryan Day, I don't know. I don't worry too much about the quarterback position. I think he's shown that he's going to have a dude. You know what I mean?
Uh,
And I think Kyle McCord is a dude. I really do. I think if things had worked out, that Kyle had stayed at Ohio State, I think he would have had a monster year. Like he had a monster year at Syracuse, throwing to nobodies
yeah.
in behind a bad O line with no running game. So Ryan Day, he knows that position. So I don't stress out or fret about the quarterback position the way I used to in the old days,
Yeah.
because this guy has shown that he makes quarterbacks, he can get quarterbacks, he develops quarterbacks. He's always got a quarterback. So like I said, I don't think it's anything to worry about. And then, like you mentioned, with Julian being so young, and I think Julian's going to be really good. I'm all in
Yeah.
on Julian
Oh,
saying,
same.
I think he's going to be special. And I think you're going to have him for a while. So I don't think there's a sense of panic.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that play with the quarterback position because again, Mark Pantoni is really good at managing the money. And he's the guy he's the master of coin for Ohio State football. And so, when you're getting some of these high school seniors to commit, they command a significant amount of money to commit to your school. So when you got Julian Sand as a sophomore, and it's like, well, we could pay this kid coming out of high school, but if Julian's really good, he might be here for a sophomore, junior, and even a senior year. And then that kid that you just paid the money
You
to
never know.
he might hit the portal. So all of a sudden you're out like a really significant amount of money for a kid that might be starting against you or going elsewhere in the transfer portal. So I just, I've seen Marcus Freeman and some of these guys. I mean, they're getting portal guys every year. Now Marcus isn't this year. He's got Lloyd Carr's grandson as his guy, but they were
Oh, yeah, right.
they were portal, and I think the thing there's one thing I love about Ryan above all else is that if that quarterback room isn't where he wanted, man, he'll come in there, he'll flip the table over and clear everybody out. I mean, you're watching the draft and you see Quinn Ewers, portal guy drafted, you see McCord, portal guy drafted, you see Will Howard, who took McCord's spot, drafted. I mean, he does not care, and again, he will.
Right.
If it ain't where he
Right.
wants it, man, he gonna put that hammer down and get it where it needs to be. He's gonna go get somebody. I mean, again, like last year, I think about this time, we were in on Cam Ward, Will Howard. I mean, he was kicking the tires on really good players and worked out great. But I think that this is it's going to be interesting to see how it affects quarterback recruiting because when you have a guy who's a true sophomore as a starter, but he might not be a 3-and-out guy, I think it makes it really hard, man, because these quarterback dads are different. They're different because they know if their son's their lottery ticket, man, it's going to be tough to not get it going. So, well, we got a super chat real quick, and I will get this real quick. All right, Tim Z, thanks for the 5. He says, glad to see Bill on live. Appreciate you. Bank, we're gonna get you on here a little bit more. Everybody misses you, so especially when we get a star
Awesome.
receiver, it'll be good. So. Well, let's wrap this thing up, Bank. Any final thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, I just think, this is the glory days. You know what I mean? Recruiting's rolling. They kind of own the portal, like you said. They're not behind in money. They're coming off a championship. And, when your school wins a championship, I think it kind of it alleviates a lot of pressure for the fan base. You know what I mean? When you start to go, if you can win one every 10 years, you're doing great. But people hate the 9 years in between. And I think there's going to be a little grace period this year with this team. Just don't lose that third game. I think it's got to be the mantra this year. 10-2 is fine. Be the 12th team. Be the 12th seed. It's okay. You know what I mean? This is not going to be the same team in January that we see in September. So I think this is a year, sit back and enjoy it. You can still enjoy that championship for more than 1 year. So if they don't win it all this year, it's okay. But I think this team in January is going to be a lot different team than what we see in September. So make the championship last for you. Bask in the glow a little longer.
I know. Enjoy the good times. All right, we're going to get this thing wrapped up. Again, we appreciate the bank. The bank just signed a very nice extension. Very excited to have him for another 3 years on top of his current deal. So really excited that he is a part of the family. And again, his content is exclusive to BuckeyeScoop.com, where he's bringing the heat with his recruiting articles. He had this one first. He never wavered on Kaden Dixon Wyatt. So really good news for us. Really good stuff in terms of the content and the connections. So Bank is the best in the business, and I'm glad that he's with us at BuckeyeScoop.com. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. And I appreciate you guys so very much for being a part of the show. If you want to do something huge for us to support us and help us out, again, we're adding talent to our roster. Our team is incredible at this point, and we're so excited about it. Give us a follow on Apple Podcasts. We've been on that. Get on your iPhone, click on the podcast app, and let's see you guys continue to grow those. Thank you for the 5-star reviews. I see a lot of you guys are doing that. But we appreciate all of you guys that have been helping us out. So as always, thank you guys so much for all you guys do. Make sure you guys in the comments shout out how often do you want to see Bank? Because I love seeing Bank. I think he did a great job tonight. But you want him weekly, monthly, and we'll bring him on as need be. And also the Buckeye boys are starting up Monday, Thursday. They're going to lead in, much like Funky normally does on Sunday. They're going to go that 6 to 7 hour. We're going to go from 7 o'clock on. Nevada and I, our normal show, but we're just kind of beefing up the podcast roster with Mello and Devin going Monday, Thursday, 6 to 7. So again, make sure you guys give those guys a follow on their YouTube. We're trying to help them grow their platform. Super excited about them. They have amazing content. So I think it's going to be outstanding. So with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. See you guys at 7:10. Go Bucks.